would hope that the silver lining around our mortality, one of the benefits of dying, is that at least you're finally spared from our incredibly woke and tremendously stupid culture. But the problem is that our culture is so incredibly woke and so tremendously stupid that you can't even fully escape it in death. Long after you've died, your body decomposed into the ground, the woke brigade might still come along and cancel you. Now, granted, when you're dead, you probably won't care very much. Things will either be going so well for you at that point or so poorly that it's not going to bother you much either way to find out that you've caused an extremely belated controversy on Twitter. But those of us who are still alive will have to deal with it. So even if you aren't troubled, it's annoying as hell for the rest of us. And that brings us to Judy Garland, who is the latest dead person to find themselves on the cancellation chopping block. Garland died over 50 years ago, but that didn't stop her from provoking mass outrage on multiple social media platforms over the weekend when the woke brigade found out that Judy Garland in the 1930s, almost 100 years ago, did blackface. Now, one of the posts calling attention to this fact came from some random Twitter account that published an image of the actress in blackface along with this caption, quote, "2 movies, a year apart, same. Shout out to Gen Z for teaching me this." Now, that post was viewed 57 million times. TikTokers also got in on the action. Here's another random account that managed to get a lot of traction with a post calling attention to the blackface issue. Watch.
Talk about Judy Garland as a child in blackface.
Coming for to carry me home. Oh, I come from the South, from way down south, where the corn and potatoes used to grow. There's great big elegant pictures show, and my old Kentucky home is a French chateau, way down south in Dixie, sweet, oh, sweet.
Diego, I think we got something there.
I'll say we have.
Carry me home.
All right. So that's real music, at least. Now, from there, the media jumped into action. Outlets like Newsweek and the Daily Dot published articles on the subject. The Wrap had this headline: Judy Garland criticized for wearing blackface in 1938. White people found this an acceptable form of entertainment. Yes, those dastardly white people. It's important that we spend all of our time looking for all the bad things white people did in history. We must leave no stone unturned. Did anyone of any other race enjoy forms of entertainment in 1938 that we today would find offensive? Well, who cares? That's not important. All that matters is what white people were doing wrong. And here's another thing that they were doing wrong. Of course, if you really want to be upset about white people in blackface, you don't have to go back that far. I mean, there's always Justin Trudeau or Jimmy Kimmel. But Trudeau is a leftist and Kimmel voted for Biden, so they get off the hook. Now, Garland probably also voted for Biden since she's dead, but that did not absolve her, apparently. Now, we should note that some people did come to Judy Garland's defense. They swept in to add nuance and contextualize the Judy Garland blackface scandal. And although these nuance adders are less crazy and slightly less obnoxious than the woke mob, they still missed the point by several thousand miles. Watch this.
Judy Garland was trending yesterday on the app formerly known as Twitter. Let's discuss. This user expressed their outrage at finding out that Judy Garland had made films with blackface. If you don't know me, hi, my name is Tori. I'm a Wizard of Oz historian and collector, and as such, I know a lot about Judy Garland, her filmography, and her career. Before we begin, I want to start by giving a trigger warning because I will be showing images and some clips from films that have blackface scenes. But I hope even if you are made uncomfortable by this type of content, you will try to muddle through because it's important to talk about. I'd also like to add the caveat that I'm coming at this from the perspective of a white person, and therefore my voice in this conversation is not as important as black voices.
Well, if you were hoping for a rational, common sense perspective, you've already heard 3 things here that should temper those expectations. Specifically, there's her caveat that her voice doesn't matter because she's white. Also, she unironically offers trigger warnings, and perhaps most concerning of all, she identifies herself as a Wizard of Oz historian, which sounds a bit like claiming that you're an anthropologist who specializes in studying the ancient kingdom of Wakanda. We're not starting on the right foot here, to put it mildly, but let's keep listening anyway. Here it is.
I'm not going to sit here and make apologies for blackface or to try to justify it. It's gross. It's gross. But here's the truth about Judy Garland's participation in this. She had no agency over what roles she did. Here is Judy Garland signing her MGM contract at the age of 13. in which she also agreed to give her mother, Ethel Gum, a portion of her weekly paycheck, making her the main breadwinner for her entire family. Louis B. Mayer was not shy about making sure that his stars stuck to their contracts. Judy Garland was assigned scripts to do, and then she did them. 2 movies, a year apart, same, because it's much easier to just blame Judy Garland rather than the patriarchal system that made her decisions for her.
And there it is. Let's not cancel Judy Garland from the year 1938. Let's instead cancel the patriarchy from the year 1938. This is what we get from Garland's defenders. Though she does make one correct point, which has been echoed by nearly everyone else defending Judy Garland from this posthumous cancellation attempt, it's true that she was a kid when she performed in blackface. She didn't have full agency over her decisions. All of that is true. But it's also not really the reason why it's so stupid to get offended by a blackface performance from the 1930s. The real reason is simply that performing in blackface in the 1930s was not some great sin back then. It doesn't matter how old she was at the time. What matters is the time, the 1930s. That's the only relevant detail here. That's all that needs to be said. In a world filled with uncertainties, one shocking headline can spread panic like wildfire, and grocery stores are empty within hours. It's crucial then to be ready for whatever comes your way. Having a reliable food storage system can provide you with peace of mind and the assurance that you and your loved ones will be well taken care of. Right now, with My Patriot Supply, you'll save $200 on a 3-month emergency food kit to help stock your supply. Go to preparewithwalsh.com and grab this special price before it ends. Your 3-month emergency food kit provider provides over 2,000 calories each day for optimal strength and energy in stressful situations. You can enjoy a wide variety of My Patriot Supply food, from buttermilk pancakes and chicken Alfredo to rice pudding. Their meals have you covered for every part of your day. The best part is that each meal is delicious. It's better to have an emergency food supply and not need it than to need it and not have it. Don't wait for disaster to strike before taking action. Invest in your safety and well-being by securing your food storage today. Go to preparewithwalsh.com and get $200 in savings with each kit your family needs. That's preparewithwalsh.com. Blackface was not a big deal in the 1930s. Now, we might consider it a big deal today, unless you're the Canadian Prime Minister, but the people living in the 1930s were living in the 1930s, not in the modern age. Okay, they just didn't see it that way. You can say, well, they should have seen it that way. Yeah, but they didn't. Okay, so they just didn't. That's all. Judging them by modern standards, it's not just unfair and wrong, though it is both of those things. It's also incoherent. It doesn't make sense. You might as well say that Johnny Unitas wasn't a good quarterback because he never scored any home runs. Just you're judging by a completely different set of standards. It doesn't mean anything. See, I will never stop marveling at the fact that we live in a society filled with moral relativists who are relativistic about everything except the one thing they should be, in a certain sense, relativistic about. Most of the time, these people can be heard saying things like, hey, I'm just living my truth, man. Hey, don't impose your morality on me. Normally, they would say that truth and morality are fundamentally and substantively relative, that they change entirely from person to person. And yet, when it comes to assessing the actions of our ancestors, of people who lived decades and centuries ago, these very same people suddenly become merciless and stringent moralists, imposing one unwavering set of morals on people who don't agree with it. Now, the irony, of course, is that this one time when they drop the relativistic gig is the one time when it would actually apply, again, in a certain sense. And let me explain what that sense is. Moral truth does not change over time. What is objectively immoral today was objectively immoral 90 years ago and 900 years ago. So moral truth is not relative. However, moral culpability is relative. Okay? You don't need to factor in the century and decade when a sin occurred in order to decide if it was a sin. But you do need to factor those things in if you're trying to assign moral responsibility for those sins. And if you're trying to assess the degree of moral responsibility. A wrong action does not become more or less wrong over time, but an individual can be more or less responsible for that wrong action over time. Which means that the amount of personal responsibility that we should assign to individuals for racial insensitivity in the 1930s or any time period before that is basically nothing. Okay, it's essentially no responsibility. Racial sensitivity, as we recognize it today, did not exist in the world, anywhere, among any group of people a century ago. How much blame should we give to any one individual for not having personally achieved a racial enlightenment that nobody else in the world had achieved either? How much guilt should we assess to people who failed to have developed the kind of racial sensitivities that nobody else on the globe during that era had developed either? The answer to those questions is basically none. And this is the fact you have to deal with. People in history saw the world differently. They saw each other differently. They therefore acted very differently. And that's just the way it was. You can be mad about it. You can be upset. It can make your tummy hurt. But your anger is futile and stupid. And mostly it is a cover. It is an excuse. I'll back up. It's not, yeah, you're stupid, but you're also a coward. Okay, it's cowardice as well. Because you want to spend your time blaming other people for their lack of moral insight while not thinking at all about your own inadequacies in that regard. Judy Garland didn't see a problem with blackface because really nobody at that time saw a problem with it. And you can waste time canceling Judy Garland for that, or you can ask yourself, what evils do you support and promote today just because everyone else supports and promotes it? Where are your moral blind spots? Maybe stop and think about that before you go searching for another dead person to lecture for their shortcomings. And that is why those who are trying to cancel Judy Garland are themselves today certainly canceled. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.